as that famous saying now goes, your job is not going to get taken by AI. It's going to get taken by a human using AI really well.
If you're able to prompt effectively, it is not a different skill set to managing people effectively. It's the same skill set. So actually, a weird corollary of all this LLM stuff is that management as a skill is actually probably more valuable than ever, because you can now manage a whole army of LLMs for the cost of your kids' pocket money. So, wow.
You're listening to the Startup Podcast. This is a Reacts episode. Industry insiders having frank debates about the latest tech, politics, and business news. Whether you're a founder, investor, or operator in a startup, you'll gain insights into how current events connect to broader themes and trends that impact your startup, your investments, and your day-to-day operational decisions. The conversation starts now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Startup Podcast Reacts. This is going to be a bit of a short episode, but a great one. We're going to talk about Microsoft's quantum processor, their new chip, and now competing with Google's Willow processor. Is this going to break cryptography, going to break Bitcoin? Is it going to break AI, or is it just going to break Yaniv's head? We'll tell you about it after the break. We're also talking about the figure robots now collaborating. They can hand things off to each other and work together to conspire to murder you in your sleep. We're also going to talk about Gibberlink, where agents can collaborate in a different language than English or any other human language, so they can conspire to kill you over the phone. And then we're going to talk about Claude's new model, how it beats all the other models at engineering. Once again, engineers are in the crosshairs of these LLMs. And then finally, in Trend Spotting Corner, we're going to talk about why AIs might not be that smart when you compare them to domain experts and what you can do about it. All that, much, much more on this week's show. Stay tuned right after the break.
Beep, beep, boop, boop. Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. And it gets even better. Just for TSP listeners, you can get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's vanta.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off. All right, welcome back. Just before we jump in, I need to remind you all about the Startup Podcast Pact. In return for all the value that we give you with this show, we ask only a couple of things in return, and that is that you subscribe to us and like us on your favorite listening app, follow us on YouTube, and give the Startup Podcast a shout out on LinkedIn or wherever it is you have your audience. Okay, now let's jump in.
Our first topic today is Microsoft's new Majorana chip, Majorana chip, Macarena chip. Anyway, it's a new chip, a quantum chip, which has apparently 1 million qubits on it. These guys had to invent a new kind of matter in order to create stable qubits. And as far as I can tell, Yaniv, they've got many, many more qubits than the Willow chip that came out from Google just a couple of months ago. And Microsoft is predicting the arrival of useful quantum computing in years, not decades, which was the prediction from Jensen Huang. This strikes me as an interesting observation around, innovator's dilemma and being caught up in what you believe versus what might actually be true, right? He's very much invested in classical computing. He has a whole roadmap around classical computing. And, maybe he's wrong about quantum and he may miss that paradigm shift. So we have to take his words with a grain of salt. These guys think this is years, not decades away. And they've been investing decades in this project. And it's the first, other than Willow, the first real quantum computing chip that might actually start this whole thing rolling. I thought it was brilliant. As you know, Yaniv, quantum computing is massive. It would be yet another breakthrough platform shift. The best analogy I've heard about quantum computing, just to set this up properly, is classical computing is like a truck or a car. It can explore the land, for sake of argument. quantum computing doesn't do that faster. It explores whole different terrain. So it can explore, let's say, like the ocean, like a submarine or a boat. It's very different computing problems, generally speaking, although there's some overlaps. And it allows us to open up whole new fields of computation and simulation. So this is a whole bunch of trends, converging or occurring at the same time. AI, blockchain, embodied robotics, and quantum. And so, Yaniv, what do you make about the impending quantum revolution? When is the quantum ChatGPT moment going to occur? And what might it mean for founders, for investors, and for cryptography, for material science, for weather prediction, all that stuff?
I don't know. Next topic. Now, Chris, I don't know if this is really a fair reaction, but to me, quantum computing feels a little bit like fusion, which is like one of these technologies that has a lot of hype around it, and it's always a bit in the future, and it's never quite there, and it never actually does anything useful for us in the real world. Now, I understand, if quantum computing is achieved, it can do a whole bunch of stuff, potentially cure diseases and stuff. On the other hand, alarmingly break all existing cryptography and cryptocurrency, so that would be bad. And maybe that's coming. But in the meantime, even if it's years and not decades away, as Microsoft promises, we may well have achieved artificial general intelligence or even superintelligence by then. Like the singularity might come before quantum computing is commercially useful. And so, I don't know, man. Like, there's just some part of me that's a bit exhausted by all this and feels like, come back to me when it does have its ChatGPT moment, and then, then I'll jump on the train and provide a bunch of analysis. But right now, even with these announcements, it doesn't feel like it's escaped the research lab. So yeah, I don't know. What do you say?
Fusion has not released physical products that you can pick up and buy commercially, right? This is a chip with a new type of matter that has an actual computational ability. Right? This is much, much more real than fusion, I think.
Wait, can you buy this thing?
Yeah, you can buy this thing, as far as I understand. It's a thing you can hold in your hand and use it, right? And
well, you can hold it in your hand. I mean, there are research fusion reactors too. I'm wondering if this is actually something that anybody can actually use.
According to ChatGPT, no, neither Majorana 1, whatever it's called, or Google Willow is available commercially yet. They're both in research and development phase. So, okay, well,
There you go.
All right, that's a little bit further off. But look, maybe AGI will be dependent on quantum computing chips. And maybe this is actually not the ChatGPT moment, but the GPT moment, right? So I remember a year or two before ChatGPT, I remember a friend sending me videos about GPT. And I'm kind of like, this is incredible, but it seems like magic. Is this really real? And it took the ChatGPT product to make it real, to make everybody stand up and pay attention, even though it was around for, quite a little bit of time before that. And so, I'm conscious this might be the pre-ChatGPT moment, the GPT where it's sitting there, there's an API, but no one quite knows what the breakthrough application is yet.
Yeah, that's right. And, I feel like, I haven't looked into this in depth, Chris, but like if quantum computing can crack cryptography and we have these quantum computing chips, then where's the proof of concept of cryptography being cracked? Because that would be a big news story. In the meantime, it's like, I'm reading these articles. They're like, Microsoft claims that this innovation will enable the creation of quantum computers capable of solving complex real-world problems within years rather than decades. Okay, but today they still can't really do anything useful. That's what I read as subtext there. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I'm glad you brought it up, but I'm also not getting my knickers in a knot over this just yet. It's a wait and see for me.
All right. Well, that was a bit of a nothing burger then. Let's talk about topic number 2, which we also want to do very lightly before we get on to some of the more fun stuff. Figure just released a new video showing 2 of their robots. If you're not familiar with Figure, they're building humanoid robots powered by ChatGPT.
This is a company, Chris, that just last week we discussed announced a raise at a $39.5 billion valuation. So this is a very large, well-funded advanced robotics company.
Yes, and they've made some incredible demonstrations with natural language interfaces, picking up arbitrary objects and organizing them and so on. Obviously, these are, well-controlled environments. The recent demo they showed was another kind of mind-bending moment where they had 2 of these robots collaborating. One of the robots was given a mix of things, and the other robot was given a mix of things. One robot was closer, let's say, to the trash can. The other was closer to some shelves. they would literally hand things off to each other and to help orchestrate, this one belongs in the trash, so I'll pass this one to you. This one belongs on the shelf, I'll pass it to you. And the way they would kind of look at each other and sort of acknowledge each other when they did the handoff was creepy and awesome. And so we just wanted to just lightly touch on this and point the audience to go check this video out. Sometimes you forget just how many things these robots have to do to be practical in the real world. One of them is certainly natural language. The other is navigating arbitrary spaces. The third is collaboration with each other and with you. And so it was really neat to see that breakthrough or to see that demonstration.
That's really cool. And to me, this is much more exciting than the quantum computing thing that we just discussed, because although this might still be a tech demo, we're seeing real robots doing real things today. And we can see this coming out not in years instead of decades, but in months instead of years, right? We're very, very close to this. And so this is an exciting time. And, I do think that there are a lot of these different things, a few of our stories, less so quantum computing, but some of our next ones all dovetailing together. Because the next thing I think, Chris, we'd like to segue to is this fun video of two AI agents on the phone to each other, discovering that the other one is an AI agent and switching to a weird agent-only R2-D2-ish language for greater efficiency. And so another example of collaboration and cooperation between AI agents. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I think they call it Gibberlink, and it's this open source protocol that some engineers have put out. You say it sounds like R2-D2, and it does, I guess. It also sounds like a modem in the 90s, right? It's literally
it's weirdly retro.
Very retro. We're now sending dial tone down, voice links. Bizarre. Look, I was having this debate with someone recently in the AI space, a very well-funded AI company, and we were talking about, is Operator really the future interface for agents? Is it really
ChatGPT Operator we're referring to there?
I'm talking about ChatGPT or OpenAI's Operator, where it opens up a browser window and it's clicking around a browser interface. And he was arguing, look, agents are not going to be clicking around browser interfaces. They're going to be dropping into some API layer. And I said, look, maybe in the metadata of the page, there'll be a chat endpoint that the agent can go talk to. Maybe there will be a growing number of apps or sites with a bit of metadata in the header. Instead of OG image, for open graph image, it'll be AI and, chat endpoint. And you could be able to say, here's the REST endpoint or the webhook to send voice commands to this thing. But the nice thing about Operator is that it allows you to bootstrap onto the human world. And that's really cool. It allows you to just make all websites accessible to agents without any adoption of any new protocol. The same thing is true here. Should these guys be talking together through API calls on the web instead of through English on the phone? Probably. But it allows them to bootstrap on the human interface. And would it be cool if they could also switch to modem style, fax machine style beeps and boops to leverage the human voice interface, voice transport layer, while switching to machine language? I think that's a cool way to bootstrap onto the human interface. And so I think in the end of the day, it's going to be a mix of all these things. It's going to be, does the website have a voice layer or a chat layer? No. Okay, we'll use the normal UX. Does the thing have a phone? Okay, we'll call it. Is the person on the other line an agent? Okay, we'll switch to Jabber Talk. And it's just a multimodal world.
Well, this is interesting. And, it's funny. It sounds like R2-D2, but actually what we're talking about is something closer to C-3PO, a bit of a protocol droid. Because if you watch the video, it's really fun to watch. They get on the phone, they're like, hi, I'm an agent. They're speaking English at this point. And the other one says, oh, I'm an agent too. And they said, oh, we're both agents. How delightful, or something hilarious like that. And then they're like, would you like to switch to Jibber Talk to make the interaction more efficient? Yes, I would. And they're like, beep, beep, boop, boop. And so the funny thing here is yes, these agents are negotiating, they're acting as protocol droids. But here's the slightly dystopian thing to me about all this, Chris, is it's like, when you use the word bootstrapping, we talked about it last week and we were talking about it again today, that, why do we have humanoid robots and agents talking to each other in English or other human languages and Operator using browsers? It's because the world was built for humans. And so these agents and these AI tools and robots are fitting into that world that's built for humans. But using that word bootstrap adds that dystopian layer, because it's like, oh, they're starting off by using the world that's built for humans, but then they're going to build on top of that a world built for robots. And where do we fit into that? Because I can't speak Gibberlink and neither can you.
Hey, I'm learning Gibberlink as we speak, actually. But you could just imagine, now just a bit of flight of fancy. You can imagine that you got two robots in your house, maybe the vacuum cleaner and the dishwasher, and you're like, hey guys, you're not doing a good enough job. Collaborate better, and I need you to clean up before tonight. I have some guests coming over. And you can imagine them going, yes, sir, sure, no worries. And then as they're walking away, they're gibber talking to each other like this fucking guy.
It's that feeling when you're in a foreign country and you feel like they're talking about you, but you can't tell what they're saying.
Right, they're just sitting in the corner, kind of like in low power mode, conspiring to murder you in your sleep.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a bit creepy, that's for sure.
Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Dovetail, Flow Health, and Quora all use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Why aren't you? Get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's VANTA.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off. Okay, we've talked about the robots, the physical manifestation of these AI agents. We've talked about how to communicate and collaborate with each other more efficiently. Now let's go back to the actual brain behind it all, these large language models, because our final story of today, Chris, is that Anthropic, the makers of Claude, have released a new frontier model called Claude 3.7 Sonnet, and it is very, very good. In particular, it's very, very good at coding. So it is a general purpose model, and it is, blitzing on a bunch of benchmarks, and that pace of change is pretty insane. But in terms of being able to write code, and we talked about this just last week, I think, Chris, the fact that junior engineers are starting to be supplanted by AI's ability to code. This is another big step forward. And so, I think this has implications, first of all, tactically and directly, again, for anybody who is a startup founder or anybody who is a software engineering or is involved with product development. I don't care how cynical you are. I'm a cynic and a skeptic myself. And maybe you tried Copilot 9 months ago and was kind of crap. But the pace at which these things are advancing is insane. And, even before this announcement, people have said, well, now these coding tools are really great. Well, they just got a whole lot better in the last 24 hours. And so things are moving really, really fast. Just because something didn't work for you 6 months ago, look again, think again, keep evaluating, keep learning. It is your role now as a founder, as a person in technology, just to keep up with all the stuff that's changing. This is not a hype train, folks. We've seen hype trains before. I've called them out. This is real stuff that's happening. And if you are not going to ride this wave, you are going to be pulled under by it. That's my view. So yeah, Claude 3.7, really exciting. We had Grok 3 join the race last week. Less excited about that, but what we're seeing is this intense competition. If anything, competition doing what competition is supposed to do, Chris, which is accelerating the pace of change. And this is just another example, hot on the heels of OpenAI announcing things, of Google announcing things, of XAI announcing things. Now it's Anthropic's turn, and it's another big step forward.
So now, to make the counter argument in our final topic, we wanted to do a bit of a trend spotting segment. We do this every now and then. We did it last episode, and where Yaniv or I will notice some trend or some theme or some underreported idea and want to just bring it to the surface on the show. And for this week, I wanted to talk about the idea that maybe AI ain't as smart as we think in this particular way. So, this idea, the gel man amnesia effect. This is
my second favorite law named after a person. Yes.
Yeah, this is the idea that when you read the newspaper or read a news article, and if you're reading about something you're an expert in, you will very quickly, very often go, this is full of shit. They're missing important details. They're conflating information. They're missing the point. And you just kind of realize just how lazy or sloppy or misguided the reporting actually can be. And then you turn the page and you're like, oh, this is brilliant. You just take the story at face value because it's about a topic you don't know. And you continue to trust the reporting that you read in whatever, your favorite blog, your favorite website, your favorite newspaper. I feel like the same thing is happening for AI. Because when I ask ChatGPT questions about product management, product strategy, business models, I find the answers to be utterly generic and often missing the point. They're just like this bland, generic nonsense. And even when I train it with all my blog posts and transcripts and stuff, I will have this kind of eval question that I ask it around partnerships. What does Chris Sard think about partnerships when I make a custom GPT? And it still just shits the bed. It just gives this generic nothing answer about, hey, partnerships are great for companies and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, wrong, fail. And this struck me this week because I did the same thing in medicine. I was trying to diagnose myself with something, and I asked it a bunch of questions, gave it a bunch of info, and it gave me what seemed like an incredibly insightful clinical answer. And I was like, wow, this is freaking awesome. We don't need doctors. And I sent it to a friend of mine, a clinician friend, and I said, hey, what do you make of this? Is this how you would think about this diagnosis? And she ripped it to shreds. She's like, there's a bunch of category errors here. It's a bunch of generalizations. It forgot this and that, blah, blah, blah. This is not for sure. This could be this. And I was like, wow. So while, these engineers are making Claude and ChatGPT really good at engineering, it maybe, just maybe, when it comes to other domain expertise, it's going to require those domain experts to really, really dig in and build custom models, or, they'll have to hire teams of domain experts to specialize, or I don't know what. But I think there is this gel man amnesia effect that's occurring with LLMs that we should be on the lookout for.
I think that is somewhat fair. Here's the way I would sort of frame it, Chris. I think that in a lot of domains, the top 1% of human experts in that field are still better than AI, maybe even the top 10%. But I would wager that in a lot of these cases, if you took the median practitioner, the median human practitioner in that domain, and pitted it against the AI would often come out on top. Your friend might be an incredible doctor, and I have a lot of respect for the medical profession. But there are many cases where I have been misdiagnosed, had things missed by doctors. I know there are too many anecdotal cases, and yes, they're anecdotal, of people putting their symptoms into an AI and getting an accurate diagnosis that medical professionals missed. And so, yes, is your random, untuned ChatGPT or Claude or whatever the best doctor in the world? I would be shocked if it was. It's not. Is it better at diagnostics than the median doctor in the world? I wouldn't at all be surprised if it were. And there are benchmarks. You mentioned medicine. There are medicine-specific benchmarks where AIs outperform humans, and humans meaning trained medical professionals. And so, yes, similarly with coding, as I've talked about, it's like a junior engineer. AI is not yet able to write production-grade code without close supervision from a very talented engineer or group of engineers. But can it write a lot of code? Can it replace a junior? Can it replace a less talented engineer? I would say in a lot of cases, yes. So yes, it's a form of gel-man amnesia if we assume it's an expert and it's only pretty good. But I do think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I actually think I agree with you. And I actually think this is interesting because you're right. If the questions I was asking it about my domain expertise, right, startups and business models and product, if I was asking those questions of less competent product managers, business operators, strategists, they would probably give me those sloppy, shitty answers. And so it is a junior or incompetent version of one of those things. But I also think it's also a problem of prompt engineering and knowing the questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you ask a generic question, you will get a generic answer. It will give you this kind of amorphous blob average of all of the thoughts of all of the people on the web. If you ask it much, much more precise questions with great context and great constraints, I think it is also likely to give you better answers. And who was it that recently published a kind of prompt engineering template for O1? I think it was Greg Brockman, actually. I could be wrong. They were saying these reasoning models need to be treated with quite a bit more structure when you're prompting them. And he was saying you need to kind of ask the question, provide the context, specify things to avoid or what have you, and so on. And that's how and when you get the very, very best answers from O1 style models. And so we're kind of getting back into programming territory there with much more structured prompts.
I disagree with that, actually. So I'm glad you brought up prompt engineering, because I think prompt engineering has, as with everything in AI, in a vastly accelerated way, gone through the full hype cycle, where I remember not long after ChatGPT first came out, people would be like, prompt engineering is the only skill anyone's ever going to need in the future. If you want to make $1 million a year, just learn prompt engineering, blah, blah, blah. And then people were like, that's bullshit, blah, 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 your sort of reaction. And the term's sort of gone away and nearly gotten a bit of a negative connotation. But now I think it's past that trough of disillusionment in the Gartner hype cycle. And they're like, oh, being able to prompt AI as well is actually a really important generalizable skill in this new world. And I think maybe prompt engineering is the wrong name, which is where I said I disagree with you, because I don't think it's like coding. I think it's a lot more like management or leadership. we should coin a new term, right? Which is like, LLM management or something like that. LLM mentorship.
LLM leadership.
Right? Which is, how do you get the most out of especially a relatively junior member of your team? Well, goddamn, Chris, we've talked about that a lot on our podcast. In our EDU episodes, we talk about how do you drive alignment? How do you share context? How do you delegate effectively? All of this stuff that is hard to get humans to do what you want them to do. All of those themes are about the fact that it's hard to get humans to do what you want them to do, and that being able to do that effectively is a very valuable, high leverage leadership skill. Well, I think it's just the same for AI, right? Don't call it prompt engineering, call it something else. But I think being able to instruct AI well is a valuable, high leverage skill. And I don't think that's going away.
You're absolutely right. All the things that make you an incredible 10x contributor. And by the way, I had a whole argument about 10x on my LinkedIn last week, so go check that out.
Ooh.
Or rather this week, if you're listening to this.
It's been a long week, hey, Chris?
Yes. Yeah, this week. Go back to my post this week. But you're right. It requires great lateral thinking, great leadership, asking the right questions, first principles thinking. And, maybe the AI becomes more intuitive. Maybe it helps to see around corners. I don't know. But, I think in the foreseeable future, and that might only be 6 months, as that famous saying now goes, your job is not going to get taken by AI. It's going to get taken by a human using AI really well. And so dive in there and learn how to use it really well and become a better leader. An LLM leader, Yaniv. We've coined it here.
But that's right. But also, I think the deeper point I'm making is it's not a different skill set. It's the same skill set. It is simply good leadership, good management, good delegation, good context sharing. It is those things. And if you're able to prompt effectively, it is not a different skill set to managing people effectively. It's the same skill set. So actually, a weird corollary of all this LLM stuff is that management as a skill is actually probably more valuable than ever because you can now manage a whole army of LLMs for the cost of your kids' pocket money. So, wow.
With that, Yaniv, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me, Chris, and everybody on LinkedIn, trying to make it a bit of a less boring place and a bit of a less fascist place, much to my own regret. Please connect with me. Let me know you're a TSP listener, and I would be glad to accept your connection. How about you, Chris?
You can find me on all the social media at Chris Saad or on my site, chrissaad.com/newsletter. And you can learn about my advisory work over at chrissaad.com/advisory. All right, Yaniv, we'll catch you in the next one.
It's been fun as always, Chris. Have a good one. Today's episode of the Startup Podcast was brought to you by Vanta. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies already use Vanta. Why don't you? Get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's VANTA.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off.